There we go. Lovely. Hello. Thanks so much for being with me. I hope you are well today. I hope you're enjoying the day and that you're having a really good day. If there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. And what we're going to talk about today is the business of iridology. Iridology is a business, right? It is a skill that we employ in our business. And I want to introduce myself for just a moment first, and then we're going to hop into our topic for today. So my name is Judith Cobb, and I'm a master herbalist, a natural nutrition clinical practitioner, a certified iridologist, a certified iridology instructor, and a few more things, but the list just gets too long. I am also the author of a 200+ page iridology textbook that is available to my students only at this current time, because currently it is a digital download that my students receive as a bonus in the course. I've also written lots of other books that I've self-published on herbs for pregnancy, herbs for children, herbs for the general public. Hello, IP Diet. So good to see you. Thanks for being with me on Instagram. And John Jensen, good to see you as well. I need to just reset this so I can see that better. There we go. All righty. So I've done a lot of, I've been in this industry for 4 decades now, just over 4 decades. And I've been an iridologist for that entire time. It was something that I added to my repertoire very, very early on. I've learned several different styles of iridology and have finally settled on the constitutional style. We will talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. Putting in just a little plug here for the next live iridology course that I have coming up starting on April 21st. And if you want all kinds of details, you can hop on over to iridology.education/course-info. I'm not going to do a heavy infomercial right now because that's not exactly what you came for. Instead, what I am going to do is I'm going to pop back a slide to here. And we are just simply going to have a conversation. Actually, no, I'm going to stop the share and come just into here. There we go. Okay, because we want to have a conversation now about the business of iridology and what that looks like and questions that you maybe need to consider when you are wanting to add iridology to your repertoire. I'm just going to move my camera over a little bit. Yeah, you know, it's one of those days where I just need it set up a little differently. There we go. Okay. I think we're cooking with gas now. Perfect. So we're watching everything here. Lovely. Okay. So let's get started. Now, I've done a lot of different webinars and Facebook events and things like that in order to answer a lot of the common questions that many iridology people who want to study iridology have been asking, you know, whether they're asking about just iridology in general or about being an iridology practitioner. As everyone who has completed my iridology course will tell you, I love questions. I love it when my students ask questions because that tells me they're thinking, they're looking for more than something, right? They're looking for more than what I've given them. They want it deeper, they want meaty stuff. And so I love questions. And I want to know, as we're going along today, if you have any questions. What are your questions about the business of iridology? I want to make sure that I answer your questions. I've got a list of questions that I've prepared answers for, but I want to know if you've got questions about the business of iridology. I love when my students come up with questions, and for this next 45 minutes or so, you are my students and I want to answer your questions. I really reinforce for my students that the only stupid questions are the ones they didn't ask. So please don't let there be any stupid questions lingering in the back of your brain. Just type them into the chat or the comments wherever you are, and I will do my best to answer them for you today. So today's session is dedicated to answering questions that you should be asking anyone that you want to study with, or maybe you should have asked them before you started studying with them, about iridology, about the business of iridology. And the reason I say this is because so many people say they want to learn iridology and they want to learn it for professional use, but they don't really understand how to use it. They don't understand its benefit. They don't understand some of the challenges, and there may be some. And so they embark on learning and they sign up for a course, and at the end of the course, they're frustrated because they've learned iridology, but they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to integrate it into their business. So there are some challenges that can arise, and this is really important. Years ago, before I was teaching iridology the way I teach it now, I was teaching another iridology course that I had created, and a naturopath from the States had attended my information session online. It was a webinar-based program again. She was already certified by one of the leading iridologists in the States. She had purchased an expensive iridology camera setup, and she confided in me that she'd owned the camera for 5 years. It was still in its original box in the corner of her office. She'd never used it. She was not using iridology because she didn't understand how to use it. She'd been taught what it is and how to do it, but not how to use it. Now, that to me is extremely frustrating. She asked, what would be any different if she took my course? And I assured her that I would teach her how to use iridology, not just a one-to-one marking to symptom correlation, because that's not even accurate in my opinion. But I would teach her how to actually integrate iridology into her clinical work. And so she signed up for my course, and literally after the second lesson, back then I think the course was only 10 lessons long, but after the second lesson, she sent me the most excited email I've ever received. And she said specifically, I get it. I now understand how to use iridology in my business. What you've covered in these first 2 lessons has just connected all the dots for me. And she said, I even opened my camera and I've started experimenting with it. And so that was very exciting to me that we had done that for her. And she, of course, finished the course. But still, the fact that she had already had the training but didn't know how to use it, it was a tool in her tool belt that was getting rusty. She wasn't using it until she figured it out. So I'm going to share with you answers to a whole lot of questions that I get asked an awful lot. And I want you to feel comfortable asking questions of me. So type them into the chat wherever you are. If you're with me on the webinar live, I'm going to ask that you actually do type them into the chat rather than the Q&A, because I don't monitor the Q&A. That's one more screen to monitor. So the first question is, how does using iridology help my clients, help me help my clients, and how does it help in my business? Okay, so when I'm using iridology, I'm using it as an assessment tool. And of course, having been in this for as long as I have, I've got the equipment to do this, but I teach my students how to do it without the expensive equipment to start with. So how it helps me help my clients. The first thing it does is it saves us time. I can ask them some questions, figure out where they think their starting point is, look at their eyes, figure out what I think the starting point is, ask them questions to get their starting point and my starting point to match up. And then from there, I can focus strictly on their needs. I'm not using some random general all-purpose questionnaire to get there, something that's going to waste 20 or 30 minutes of their time filling out and another 20 or 30 minutes of my time to read and analyze. I'm getting to the point, laser focused, focusing exactly on my client right from the moment we start. Iridology teaches us what questions to ask. When you're with a client, you want to be able to ask those laser focused questions, not again the random generalized questions that anybody could ask. You want to ask questions that are focused on your client, on what your client needs, and on where your client needs to go with their health. Iridology enables me to do that. It's a non-invasive assessment tool. I'm not a licensed medical professional. I can't do blood work. I can't requisition blood work. I can't even legally palpate anything. In fact, when clients want me to look at something, I will, but I legally am probably not supposed to, like if they've got a rash or whatever, right? Because I'm not a licensed medical professional. I am a holistic health practitioner. Iridology gives me a much deeper understanding as to what my clients' needs are. And that to me is very exciting, because the number of times when the client has come in and I've done their eye photos, iris and sclera, because I do both, pop them up on the computer. My client is continuing to describe to me their problems and what they need help with, and I'm looking at their eyes. I'm going, yeah, this totally makes sense. Yeah, I know exactly where we need to start. I see it just as clear as anything. That that gives my clients hope. It gives them the assurance that I get it, that I understand where they are, who they are, how they're put together, and that I can come up with a program for them. Having that kind of rapport and that kind of real solid foundational trust established really quickly in the client practitioner relationship is super, super important. I have taken many, many classes in many things to do with holistic health. Many classes, spent thousands of hours and tens of thousands of dollars, probably more than that by now. And so often the skills that I learned were standalone skills, skills that are difficult to integrate into a clinical setting without adding time to a session. Now, and you don't necessarily want your sessions to be longer, because then you've got to charge more from them, and that might make it prohibitive for some of the people who need your help to come to you. And so I find that iridology helps me actually to integrate everything that I already know about herbs, nutrition, lifestyle, aromatherapy, flower essences, all kinds of stuff. It pulls it all in tight. When I assess the eyes and I understand where my client is coming from, I can then very quickly choose the tools from my tool belt that will be the most appropriate thing for us to be working with at that point in time. And that's really exciting because it gives my clients extreme confidence in what we're doing. Question number 2, what other styles of iridology have I learned? I really believe that everything I learned, I need to test. I need to prove it for myself. I need to find its strengths, its weaknesses. I need to ask really tough questions to make sure this is something that I want to keep in my practice. So I've learned the Bernard Jensen style, the original Bernard Jensen style of iridology, because that's all there was when I started 40 years ago. I've learned radiant iridology. I've learned constitutional iridology. How I've ended up with the constitutional style is I studied Jensen from a couple of different teachers, and the instruction was great and the teachers were great, except for one really serious incident where I had talked a couple of my colleagues into flying to another city for a couple of days to do yet another iridology course with a Jensenian iridologist. And I had vetted the program. I'd called the organizer. I thought I knew what we were getting. We got out there, and partway through the course, this is way, way back when the Earth was young, right? We're using slide projectors, projecting an image up on a screen. There was a marking on an iris that I didn't understand. And so I asked the instructor, what does that mean? And he said, I don't see what you're looking at. So I went right up to the screen and I framed the marking with my hands. And I said, what does this mean right here? He said, I don't see what you're looking at. Other students in the class went, oh yeah, what is that? And he still said, I don't see what you're looking at. Contrast that with shortly thereafter, I learned about constitutional iridology. I had ordered some VHS videotapes because that's how they were teaching it back then. I had gone through them with a fine-tooth comb, and I had a question. I was looking at some photographs that I had taken of a client's eyes, and there was something that wasn't lining up. I didn't get it. So I phoned the phone number on the VHS videotapes on a Friday evening, thinking they'll get back to me on Monday, and somebody answered the phone. And I was looking for a man named Bill Cardona. So I said, hi, is Bill Cardona there, please? And the other voice said, this is Bill. And I said, hi, Bill. And I explained who I was, and we exchanged pleasantries. We apparently have some connections, had some connections. We still have them. We're still actually good friends now, Bill and I are. And I explained to him what I was looking at on this photo that he could not see because this was pre-internet days. And he said, well, do you see this, this, and this? And I said, no, I don't. He said, then do you see this, this, and that? And I said, yes, I do. He said, well, then you need to interpret that, what you're seeing, in this direction. I'm thinking, here's the man. He can't even see what I'm looking at. He knows exactly what I'm talking about, exactly what I need to be doing. And that was a part of what convinced me to jump ship. That and a whole lot of other things that were starting to feel very unsettled with that original style that I had learned. It doesn't mean I don't love Dr. Jensen. I think I never met the man. I know of him. I know he did a lot of good for a lot of people, and he kept iridology alive when the Cold War was on and we weren't getting new information from Europe, which is where all the research was going on. So I'm not dissing Jensen here. I'm just saying in the last 30 or 40 years, there's been a lot of research that we've been able to build on. How do you include iridology in an appointment? That's a really good question, because in my opinion, the wrong way to do iridology is to see your client, take eye photos, go off and spend 2 hours writing up a fancy schmancy report, and then either email or take that back to your client in another session. I think that's all wrong. When it takes you that long to create an iris assessment, you are vomiting too much information, and you're giving your clients stuff that is not going to be helpful to them right now. They need to know what they need to know now. They don't need to know things for 5 months down the road, 3 years down the road. They need to know about where they're at right now and how to progress from there. So when I'm doing iridology, I very much, I greet my client for the first time. I get to know them a little bit, take iris photos, pop them up on my computer screen, or if we're doing a Zoom session and they have sent me photos, I'll share my screen with them on Zoom. I'll walk them through what they need to know right now. What are the important markers that give me information about their current situation, that teach me about which organs likely need support, what kind of dietary work do we need to be doing starting right now, keeping it very succinct, very to the point, so that I'm not overwhelming them. So really, the iris assessment in the scope of an appointment, in a consultation, my first appointments are 75 minutes long. The iridology portion, once I've got those photos, is no more than 10 to 15 minutes. That's way enough time to give the client what they need to know at this point in time to move them up a level in their health. I keep it super, super simple. I can keep coming back to those photos, and we can keep building their program appointment by appointment as they are being successful with implementing homework and having success. Does that all make sense? If that makes sense, give me a wave or give me a 1, depending on which platform you're with me on, so that I know that this is landing for you. So, another question, these questions are in no particular order. How do you learn iridology during a lockdown? A lot of you, I think, that are wanting to learn iridology have got books, you might be watching things that I've produced, you might be watching things that other iridology teachers have produced, and you're really trying to do it on your own. That can be super frustrating. Healer on a Mission, thank you for letting me know this is making sense to you. And Melissa, thank you very much. I'm glad this is working for you too. Learning iridology all by yourself from a book where there's not really a lot of examples, or a book that may be out of date and be teaching information that has now been put aside because we've got better information, may not be the best way to do it. Certainly there are other options. I offer a self-study program with lots of examples, lots of explanation, recordings, like video recordings, the downloadable textbook and so on. I also offer a fully mentored version, so that if you're the kind of person who learns better with a live teacher, live online via webinar, right? If you'd like to ask questions in real time, then that will be the better option for you. So there's a couple of ways to learn iridology well in a lockdown situation. People ask me, what about certification? Is it important to be certified? And I'm going to ask questions back of you, because what I need to know is, why are you looking for certification? And that's not meant to sound like a bit of a snotty answer, or like I'm trying to say, don't do certification. What I'm really saying is, why are you actually looking for it? Are you looking for personal fulfillment because that's a completion mark for you? And it's like, if that's the case, absolutely great. That's wonderful. If you are looking for it because you are already a holistic professional and you want to be using this and potentially taking iridology and wellness programs into businesses for lunch and learns or things like that, then yes, certification is probably a good thing for you. If you're learning it for personal use and you're wanting to help friends and family, which is a really important thing to be doing, certification may not be as important for you. And the reason I say that is because when you are doing iridology and when you're going for certification, there of course are extra hoops to jump through, different processes and projects and exams that you need to pass. And then there are expenses associated with those. And there are expenses associated with maintaining certification on an ongoing basis. So if this is a hobby, certification once might be fine, and maybe not renewing it might be fine. If you want this for professional use, then you need to decide, is it going to be important to the people I'm using it with that I have certification, or is it not? And from there, you can then decide how much effort you want to invest in the certification process. I really want to underscore here that there is no right answer, there is no wrong answer. I have students who opt to certify. I have students who opt to not certify. Regardless of what they decide, I support them 100% because they know where they want to go with this. They know what they want to do with this. So I never force a student one way or the other. It's only what is going to work best in that student's setting, for that practitioner setting or that iridologist setting, for what they want to do with this. Does that work for you? Yeah. What does it take to be successful as an iridologist? Well, you got to study a lot. To learn constitutional iridology well takes study. You attend the classes and you implement and you practice. And when you take the classes, it's really important that you set aside time to practice what you're learning as you're learning it. You need, of course, to be able to take correction. Right? Good practitioners are able to take correction. If someone says, that's not right, here's the right information, you need to be able to go, thank you very much, got this, thank you, right? So important. To be a good iridologist, to be successful, you need to keep learning. There is new research coming out fairly consistently, not really quickly, but fairly consistently, and you need to keep up with that, and you need to modify what you've been using to keep up with current training. You must be willing to learn new concepts, let go of old concepts that are not serving, that have been proven inaccurate, right? You need to be able to explain things clearly and in plain English. It does no good for you to have a fancy camera setup, you do iris photos, you pop these images up on the screen, and you say to your client, well, you've got a central heterochromia and an atonic colorette. They have no idea what that means. Instead, you would say, this color that's focused in the center of your eye is brown. That suggests that you have an inherent potential for that your liver's more, or your body's more prone to having the liver not want to do all its jobs quite right. You know, you've got an atonic colorite. You have the potential to have some issues with your intestinal tract where it might be a little bit lax and sloppy. We need to continue to work with stimulating that bowel to make sure it stays strong, right? So you need to be able to explain things simply. You really need other modalities. I've had people come to me that have certified as iridologists with other instructors through other programs, and they said, I want to open shop. Okay, what do you do? Well, I have my iridology training. Okay. And what else do you do? What do you mean, what else do I do? Well, do you have nutrition training? No. Do you have herb training? No. Aromatherapy? No. Flower essences? No. Body energy? No. Nothing? No. So you're like the car mechanic who can tell you what's wrong with the car, but you can't fix it. Would you take your car to a mechanic who could do that? They could only tell you what was wrong, but they couldn't tell you what to do about it, or they couldn't actually do anything for you. They could just diagnose the problem or assess the problem. Most of us wouldn't. It's a waste of our time. So to be successful as an iridologist, you need a modality. Also, to be successful as an iridologist, you need to have a foundation in anatomy and physiology. I know some of you, maybe many of you that are with me, have had private conversations with me through the different messenger apps, and you've said, where do I start? And I hear your wonderful intentions, and I know you could do a ton of good for so many people. The one missing link here is that you don't understand the body yet. And so my first thing is always make sure you've got a good anatomy and physiology program under your belt first, just one good course. Once you've got that, iridology will make so much more sense. And if you've got a modality to go with that, then you're going to be able to do so much good. So that is a lot of what it takes to be successful. Is it a smart idea to invest in a course right now? Can iridology be learned without a face-to-face course? You know what? I think there is no time like the present to actually learn iridology. Baron Holistics says very important. I'm wondering which part is very important that you're talking about, Baron Holistics, the knowing the anatomy and physiology part. I'm hoping that's what it is. If it is, just give me a thumbs up or a wave. It is a great time to invest in a course right now. There's never a bad time to learn, right? You invest in the course, and literally, if you're investing in my program, within 2 weeks, I want you practicing on people. I teach you, and Baron says yes, to know anatomy and physiology. Thank you for that. It's so important that you start working with people right from the get-go, right? And so I actually teach my students how to teach their clients how to get iridology photos using their smartphones. Right, I've produced a couple of videos that I send out to my new clients who don't want to who don't want to or are unable to see them face to face. Healer on a Mission says, do you offer live classes in person? I do not. Let me tell you why. In order to do a live class face to face, most of the time you'll see these offered as 4 and 5 day workshops. There is so much information to learn that it's really, really challenging to learn that much content in that intensity, which is why I do them online. And I will tell you that iridology can be learned very well online with the way I teach it. I've been teaching it this way for years, like probably close to a decade now. Been teaching constitutional iridology, specifically the IPA curriculum, for about the last 4 years online. I've had many of my students graduate successfully that have gone on for certification, and find that doing an online portal works very, very well. It also saves you money. You don't have the travel expenses, you don't have the accommodation expenses. Depending on where you live, you don't have the exchange on your currency, which could be very detrimental to some people. And so this is really a lovely way to do it, is to learn online in live webinars, just like we're doing right now. Do you teach components of the Australian concepts? I am not familiar what Australian concepts are. If that's Tony Miller's work, her work is based in, she does a lot of constitutional, she does a lot of other stuff too. And I don't branch into the other stuff in my course, because my course is targeted towards the IPA curriculum. So how do you find a good course or good instructor? My suggestion is, particularly if you're looking online, look for things they've produced, videos they've produced, things that they're sharing online, and see what you think of their teaching style. See what you think of the content they've produced already. If you feel like you could be comfortable working with them, that's a good sign, and you can always reach out to that instructor one-on-one. They should be willing to talk to you either via email or via phone chat or Zoom to answer any questions you have, so that you're really comfortable making this investment of time and money. Search for courses. You're going to pay for a good course. That's all there is to it. If it's a course worth taking, it's going to be more than $150. Right? If it's actually going to teach you not just iridology, but also how to integrate it. When I talk about integration, I talk about, in my course, we actually, by the time we get to about halfway through, we are starting to practice. What are the questions you'd ask if you saw this eye? If a client comes in with this background and this eye, what are questions you would ask? What are some recommendations you'd consider making, and why? So we begin practicing that integration right in the class, and that is so important. How can we take our iridology practice from a paid by the hour financially limiting business to a business that does not have an income cap? This is an interesting thing. Most of us who are iridologists, I shouldn't say we all, but I think most want to help people, and we actually thrive on the one-to-one connection. I thrive on teaching and I thrive on one-to-one connections. Both of those are somewhat limited by an hourly income cap, depending on where you live and what your economy is where you live. Does that make sense? If you live in an area and you're working only face-to-face, there's going to be a limit to how much you can charge for a consultation. If you're doing things online, there is still a limit to how much you can charge for a consultation. One of the key ways that many iridologists augment their income and remove that income cap is they choose professional or high quality product lines to work with. So when they're doing an iris analysis, they're making recommendations, and they're talking about, the stomach lining looks like you may not be able to produce hydrochloric acid as well as you should, and pepsin as well as you should. Therefore, I'm going to suggest a digestive supplement for that. Here's the one I recommend. Here's a link where you can buy it, right? And so you can often attach supplement sales to what you're doing. And because I know you have integrity, you are not going to be over recommending. You're going to recommend exactly what the client needs. Healer on a mission. Where am I located? I am in the cold north, true and free in Calgary, Canada. And we just had 6 inches of snow last night again. When I say cold north, true and free. Okay, well, we don't know how free we're going to be for very long, but you never know. That's politics for you. If I become an iridologist, do I have to buy an expensive iridology camera? And I'm going to give you a couple of answers here. I want to take you back to that car mechanic analogy we made earlier. If you take your car to the mechanic and he can tell what's wrong, but he doesn't have the tools to do the job, are you going to consider that he is a good mechanic? Maybe not. Right? Especially if it's a rinky-dink kind of job and not a super specialized job. Here in Calgary, there are mechanics that specialize in radiator repairs and mechanics that specialize in transmission repairs. They may not have the tools to do, I don't know, change out your axle if it's got a problem, or do your brake job if you need that done. So just to be aware that ultimately you will need good equipment if you're doing face-to-face work. Now, I want to just also say that I actually tell my students while they are in the class, the only things you need are a pen light and a lighted magnifying glass that has a couple of interchangeable lenses. So we've got different strengths of magnification that we can get. That is where I encourage my students to start, right? I do not want them spending $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 on a camera setup. I don't even want them spending $199 on an iriscope. And the reason for that is the inexpensive iriscopes have lights that are fixed. You can't turn them off. You can't turn them on. You can't change the configuration. And it means that you only ever get light coming right from the front of the eye. That hides specific markings that we want to see. Starting with less than $50 worth of equipment, what this allows is this light allows you to move the light to different places so you can actually make different features pop, see them more clearly. This light is really good for when you're just beginning and you're not quite sure about the coordination yet. So I encourage my students to start here, and I tell them that if I catch them buying an iriscope or a camera before they have finished the program, I know where they live and I will come find them. I'm just teasing, of course, but the fact of the matter is I've had students who've not listened. They've bought the camera before the course was done. They were brilliant iridologists. They did so well in the program. They used iridology for a little while, and then their lives took a different course. And now they're trying to sell their equipment, but it's used equipment, so they aren't even getting half of what they paid for it. I would rather have my students start with the handheld equipment, prove that they love it, that they're going to use this, and then from every iris assessment they do with handheld equipment, or from clients sending in good smartphone photos, the best you can get, which will never be as good as you'd get with a professional eye camera, have them just have that practitioner just take $10 or whatever your currency is and stash it in an account, so that at a future time when they've saved up enough money and they know they love iridology, they can buy the camera, buy the right setup, and I can coach you. There's a couple that I think are just brilliant, and you can get the right kind of equipment. I don't want my students racing out and buying equipment right off the top. Now, you know, the quality of your equipment is going to also affect how your clients perceive you as far as being a professional. So the better your equipment, and I'm not saying like a $10,000 slit lamp microscope, that's not where we need to go with this. Unless you're a naturopath and you're going to do research with 23andMe and things like that. But for most of us, a good digital 24 megapixel camera with the right lens and the right illuminator is what we need. Right? That also allows you to do a couple of things. The most important thing that I have found that this does is it allows me then from that camera to print up 4-inch by 6-inch prints. I've got a little photo printer that prints on the cards. And as I'm printing, before I print them up, I load them into a photo editor where I can add the client's name, whether it's the right eye or the left eye, and I can add my contact information. So Cobblestone Health Limited is my business name and my phone number. And then after we've done the iris assessment looking at the computer screen, I can give my client this photo where we've actually labeled, okay, we talked about this, draw an arrow to it, what is the name of it, and I give that to them and it becomes a business card. I have clients who have actually brought those photos back to me, faded like 15 years later, saying, I still have this. This is why I'm back. I remembered what we talked about. I need more information now. I'm ready to, you know, it might not even be that long, but they save them and they bring them back, and they like having that as a record of their appointment. So that's really cool. Okay, so are there any other questions? I haven't seen any other questions come in that I haven't answered yet. And I'm just going to pop right back to here for just a moment. So those of you who are with me on the webinar, this is where what I want to show you. Those of you who are with me on Instagram, I just wanted to blob this out to you. You can DM me for this information, okay? On Monday, March 1st at 4:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 4:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Healer says, I'm still confused about what constitutional iridology is. I'll explain that in a minute. I'm doing an info session Monday, March 1st, 4:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I'm doing an info webinar about the upcoming constitutional iridology course. That course will begin on Wednesday, April 21st. If you would like to attend the info session on March 1st, DM me your email address. And just a note with course info, please, course info link, please. For those of you who are with me on Zoom right now, I am going to post the link for that webinar in the chat box. There we go. So Healer says, I'm still confused about what constitutional iridology is. So Healer, I'm going to ask you a question first. Are you familiar with Jensenian iridology? If you are, give me a message that says, yes, Jensenian. Okay. While you're doing that, Emma says, if I ask people to take their own photos, is it okay to use only natural light from a window? In my videos, I actually do suggest that people use a pen light, that they be in a dark room that doesn't have a window. And the reason I say that is photos using natural light, you're going to get reflections of the environment. We don't want that. We want the room to be relatively dark so we're not seeing things around us reflected in the light, whether it's a TV screen or a tree or a building. And we want the pen light to come in from a couple of different angles so that we see different features. So I always suggest this. Emma, you can always go to my YouTube channel, Iridology Education, and scroll back. And it was way last spring that I did videos on how to do photos. Healer on a Mission says, yes, Jensenian. Okay, so here's the difference. Jensen says that your eyes are not genetic, that your eyes change, that if you do a cleanse, you can turn your brown eyes blue, that you can get rid of different pigments that are in your eye, and so on. And so he says the eyes are very, very transient. Constitutional has done a lot of research that shows that is not the case, that what we see in the iris is inherent, that it is genetic. What we see in the sclera is what is transient. So when we look at the iris and a client comes in with a particular symptom, we look at the iris and we then understand the interplay of the different organs based on what we see in the iris, combining that with what the client's symptoms are to understand where we need to go ahead. Jensen focuses much less on the interplay of the markings. One marking equals one problem. For example, they would say that yellowish pigment in the eye is sulfur, even amongst people who've never ever been exposed to sulfur. Right? They would say it's sulfur. Constitutional says the yellow pigment suggests that that the kidneys may have a glitch in how they want to clear uric acid out of the body. And so based on that, we can then backtrack, look for other things that correlate to that. Are there markings in the kidney zone? Is there a shoe lacuna somewhere? Is there even a transversal in the kidney zone that would correlate with this? What are the client's symptoms? Do they have symptoms of being over acid, like arthritis, eczema, allergies, skin problems, kidney issues? And we can begin correlating the eyes more accurately with specific things the client needs help with. So Constitutional says the irides won't change, and that the irides will always give us questions to ask. They'll help us to understand on a deeper level what the chemistry is in the body. That's why it's so important for iridologists to have the anatomy physiology background. All right. Does that help? Healer on a Mission, did that help you? Emma, did my answer about the lights help as well? Are we good? All right, any other questions? Healer on a Mission is good. Thanks so much for that. Appreciate that feedback. And anything else that we can do here? Okay, I want to walk you through. For those of you who are with me on the webinar, you will see this. Those of you who are with me on Instagram, I'm going to move my camera. I want to do a little demo as to how this works. So we're going to bring this down here. All right, let's walk through an example of how iridology works when we're talking constitutional. This is a female client of mine. She came to me she was in her mid-30s. She was having fertility issues. She and her husband had been trying to get pregnant for about the past year. They had conceived once and had then had a miscarriage. So she came to me wondering if there was something I could do that would help. As I looked at her eyes, can you see how three-dimensional, and I apologize for those of you who are with me on Instagram, because it loses translation going through a camera to you. Can you see how three-dimensional her eyes look? How up here, we are looking deep into her eye and these little black holes, if you will. How even here, there's lots of shading, which is telling us that this fiber is sitting high on the surface of the eye. It's kind of laid on the surface, so we're getting shadows. So as I looked at her eyes and I'm thinking, wonder what's going on here, I saw this one little mark right here. It is not a lacuna. If you're a Jensenian, that would be a lesion. It is not a lesion. It is a pigment. It is a rust brown colored pigment, dark rust brown. Now, what we know is that extra brown pigment in the eye suggests that the person may have the MTHFR defect. MTHFR is still not widely known amongst the general public, but as I was talking with her in her appointment, I discovered that she also had had a history of having very lengthy cycles, so cycles that would last up to 90 days, and that she'd had a history of being overweight. She decided on her own that losing weight would be a really good idea. And so she had been reducing her carb intake, which was a very smart thing to do, because her eyes also suggest, and there are many ways to arrive at this conclusion, that she might have polycystic ovarian syndrome, that she might have some kind of a metabolic disorder. We also see towards the edge of her eye, and actually it shows up better over here, we have this white clouding. It doesn't look very white on my phone camera. This white clouding right in here, which suggests that her liver may have imbalances in the enzymes that may mess up how the liver does its jobs handling carbohydrates. And we also see these wrinkles coming around her eye like this. These are called contraction furrows. If you're a Jensenian, you would call them nerve rings probably. And those also are going to have an impact, because you know that contraction furrows mean that in constitutional, not that she's under a lot of stress, but that she actually burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium quickly. The liver needs B vitamins, and we see this indication up here that the liver, that white milky film, that the liver may not want to do its job well. And when we have polycystic ovarian syndrome, we put all of those together and we see this pigment over here. It really pads up the story for, I wonder if she has MTHFR. MTHFR means that she doesn't metabolize her B vitamins properly if they're in the wrong form. So what we did with her was continue to encourage her on the excellent dietary work that she'd already started doing. We fine-tuned that a little bit to make sure that she was not getting refined carbohydrates. We talked about the need for her to be getting daily physical activity as a way of enhancing her insulin availability, because when we see someone who has the contraction furrows and this white milky film and the pigment here and all of these lacunae, and we suspect that she's MTHFR, there is a high chance that she has polycystic ovarian syndrome, which has at its core the challenge of being insulin resistant. Okay, and so with that, we haven't talked about every marker. I haven't picked on every single marker in her eye. I haven't even looked at her nutritive zone, her stomach or intestinal tract, anything like that yet, because I didn't need to. What we did with her is we continued to clean up her diet. We made sure she was getting her B vitamins in the proper format for someone who has MTHFR. And even if she wasn't MTHFR, that didn't matter, because these vitamins are not going to hurt her. It's just going to mean that she is able to use them even more readily. And within about 3 months, she was pregnant. Amazing, right? After trying for a year and having had a miscarriage and thinking there was no hope left, we simply looked at her eyes, figured out, yep, it's probably PCOS. The doctors had never used that term with her. They had never suggested that she might be insulin resistant. I suggested that she should get some testing done, that she should get her hormones checked, that she should have a blood test for her hemoglobin A1C, which has a strong correlation to insulin resistance. And she was in the process of getting that done when she had the positive pregnancy test. And so what that meant is that I was able to coach this client without overwhelming her. I was able to very easily say to her, what you're doing with your diet so far is brilliant. Let's tweak that just a little. Let's add a little activity to it. Let's add the B vitamins in the right form. And let's give you a couple of months and see where that takes you. Right? I didn't need to go into every itty bitty detail, because so many of those itty bitty details would be irrelevant for what she needed. She didn't need everything. She needed what she wanted, and what she wanted was information on how to get pregnant. That's it. That's all. And that's where we kept it. All right, so again, for those of you that might be interested, I invite you to join me for an information webinar on March 1st at 4:30 Mountain Standard Time. And if you want to know what time that is in your time zone, just go online and Google time and date converter or time zone converter, and you can plug in 4:30 MST and it'll tell you what time that is for your own time zone. And again, if you're interested in learning about iridology and you just want to be in the loop and receive my weekly emails where we do more free trainings like this, shoot me a DM with your email address and I will add you to my list so that you can attend these every week. All right. Any further questions? I'm not seeing anything come in. And if that's all we've got for now, I thank you so much for spending this last 45 or 50 minutes with me. I truly appreciate it. I hope that's been helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take good care and bye for now.